Well, it just seemed to be the perfect metaphor, actually, to explore the relationship between India and the West. Um, and it also touched on all the topics I'm interested in, which are, women, women's lives, aging, the politics of fertility, feminism. I mean, all of that stuff is stuff I'm passionately sort of interested in anyway. Um, and also, obviously, the surrogacy also is about women's bodies and how much control they have over them. Whether your body has let you down because you can't carry a baby, or you are hired to carry somebody else's because economically that's the only thing you have to sell. So I think for all those reasons, for me, it was the perfect thing to explore. And it just happens to be a really hot topic at the moment. It is. I mean, you'd be surprised how much there is out there online. There's reams of research. And actually, I mean, if you wanted just to apply online to be a surrogate, not to be a surrogate, to hire a surrogate, you find out an awful lot because the processes you have to go through online are quite exhaustive. Because remember, I mean, in a lot of cases, the surrogate parents don't go to India. They don't leave their home countries, probably only to pick the child up. And even then, not sometimes. So there's a lot you can do sitting in in front of your computer. However, the facts don't give you the emotional background. So I was very lucky. I found a couple who have had two children via Indian surrogates, very different experiences with each one. And they've been brilliant. They've been invaluable. There's plenty of examples, listed examples, that you can research of women that certainly have been exploited, women that have been pimped out virtually by their families or their husbands or even middlemen. Because at the time that I wrote the book, and I deliberately set it in 2012 for various reasons, including that was the year of the Delhi bus rape, obviously. At that point, the industry was unregulated completely, so very open to all kinds of exploitation, much of which we wouldn't know about. I understand there's a bill going through Parliament now, and it may even have just been passed, but Modi's government, which wants to restrict surrogacy to heterosexual married couples, which will put a huge dent in the $4.5 billion industry that it is right now. So things will probably change, and regulations won't be a bad thing in some ways, because at least I hope there'll be more protection put in for the women that are surrogates. On the other hand, to restrict it to heterosexual married couples also means that a lot of people that have used the industry cannot do so now. Like many women of my generation, it's just a number to us. I think we are redefining the ageing process. So, our mothers at my age were put out to pasture. That was the time to put on your white salwar kameez and sit in the corner and go hi hi and massage your feet. We don't do that. We are still vital and young and interested and curious, and in many ways, the irony is, the irony is for somebody who's an actress, this really is the age where you are ready to play the great roles because you've lived. You've known bereavement and joy and disillusion and sorrow, and you've known the whole gamut of emotion. Now is the time to play Cleopatra and Lady Macbeth and the passionate roles. And now is actually the age where actresses find it hard to get work. That's the irony. Just when we are at our most ripe and most ready is the age where the industry thinks they can't do anything with you. And you don't look old enough to play the grandma roles, and you're not considered sexy enough to play the love interest or a woman with a kind of complex sexuality. So you're in this weird kind of hinterland where, you think, why is there such a dearth of interesting roles for women of this age? And it's echoed everywhere. I think Maggie Gyllenhaal has just said that she was recently, she's 37, considered too old to play the lover of a 55-year-old actor. There you have it. I'm now playing the mothers of actors that 5 years ago I was playing their partners. It's like that quick. The change is that quick, and it's mad. Most writers draw on a mixture of things they've lived and also what's going on with their friends. I mean, for example, I'm lucky, never had fertility issues, but, very close friends of mine have been through the utter misery of infertility. So I've drawn on knowing them and loving them and drawing from their experience to feed into Sharma's life. And obviously I know what it's like to have a blended family. I have one, second marriage, older, 13 years between my children, which is very unusual. But I have to say that, a lot of the complex sort of emotional traumas of the book are not things I've had, but I know how they could have gone that way, and I see it in other people I know. So it's sort of like a magpie. You use your own life as a little jumping off point, but often your own life is too boring to actually be the template. So you have to bring in other things too. So it's a mixture. Certainly, if you look at my parents' generation, they arrived here as like 1960. They arrived, and we were a very unknown community then, and certainly when I grew up, we were the only Asians in this tiny little white working class village. So you can imagine my childhood was fairly confrontational at times. And there was a lot of ignorance, but curiosity too. I mean, a lot of the attitudes were much more to do with a lack of knowledge rather than hostility. That seems to have changed, maybe because it's post 9/11 and Islamophobia and all of those things have fed into it. There seems to be more entrenched hostility than there was, weirdly, when I was growing up, which was much more, well, who are you? And, don't know anything about you. That's one consequence. The other happier consequence is, I think, that as a community we have really established ourselves in Britain in all kinds of fields, and I feel that my generation particularly was very entrepreneurial because we had to forge new paths, and a lot of us have really tried to keep hold of both cultures and find the best in both cultures, and that's made us quite creative, and I think and forward looking. So I think as a community we've done a lot of extraordinary things, and I also think that at this point we have a lot more in common with the Indian middle classes than we did maybe 20 years ago, because at the breakneck speed that India's going, the issues that are now facing the emerging middle classes are issues that we've had to deal with for years, which is, what do I want to keep from my home culture? What are the great traditions? What are the ones I want to get rid of? What does it mean to be Indian in a modern world? Well, we've had to ask ourselves that. I've asked myself that all my life. Now the middle classes in India are asking those same questions in quite a similar way, and I think that means we have a lot to talk about. I think that's why the book will also speak to India as well as to people here. I mean, for a start, I knew right from the beginning I had to deal with my differences, head on. And that was very good for me. It toughened me up. It made me really think about who I was. When people keep asking you, why are you here, you have to know the answer. You have to know your history and your politics, and you have to know the journey that brought you there. So I was forced to be self-aware and think about my identity in a way that a lot of my other friends that moved right into the Indian areas never really had to face in the same way, I think. I mean, I do think that, especially if you're a creative person, I mean, you have to engage with the wider community, because what we do is about communication. And I think a lot of the work that my generation of artists have done is about building bridges through art, through creative dialogue. And that's a good thing. I mean, Goodness Gracious Me is a great example. I think we did more for race relations than probably 1,000 political speeches, because we did it through humour. That's very healing. So I've always been more interested in exploring the dialogue rather than, keeping the differences up. It doesn't mean you lose who you are. It means actually you use your differences to be celebratory almost, actually. I've always tried to do that anyway.